I don't know if you're like me. I don't know if you're one that when you have an opportunity, you take it. I don't know if you are a massive action person, but I'm guessing you are if you're sitting in this room, because it takes massive action to be in business and to succeed in business. But I don't know if you're like me, where on a daily basis, I'm dealing with a lot of stress. I feel like life has altered, it's changed. And part of dealing with stress is like, how do we handle it? They're like, well, I don't know, it's just stress. So what I found is that when I think back on my life, just to share a little personal story, is over the last, I'll call it year and a half, 2 years, as a doctor, in healthcare, I don't know if you guys are aware, economically, we're in our winter, okay? Because of all the changes in healthcare, insurance reimbursements have gone down to nil. I have to fight for 5 visits with some of the major insurance companies, and it's like people have broken backs and you're begging them after 5 adjustments to cover their $20 copay. It's crazy. So over the last course of the last 2 years, between the changes in staffing, have you guys noticed that the world is changing, work ethic is changing? And we can't say it's just a generation, because that's not fair, because I have some amazing like millennials that work for me. But what I have found is that a lot of times in our society, they're proud to be snowflakes, so to speak. So if your life is dependent on other people in a team, and that's breaking down, what happens, and reimbursements are breaking down, and if you're in the economic winter in your field, or you're just starting out in a business, it can break you down. So what happened to me is, over time, even though I wake up and I make myself be positive, I've studied under the world's best, over time, you know, I had event after event after event that began to break me down, to a point where I became more of a negative person. Now, I might have had a smile on my face, I might have acted like I had passion, fake it till I make it, but it was breaking me down, where I was starting to feel like, what's gonna be next? And like the stress is never gonna end, because it didn't feel like it was ever gonna end. So I went on to, I just graduated from Tony Robbins, like university, okay? Does anybody here know Tony Robbins? He has got a lot of energy, oh my gosh. He's in his 60s, and he looks really great, and he stands on the stage for 16 hours. So I want to do anything that he does that is actually legal and ethical, right? And one of the things was when I was at his Life and Wealth Mastery just recently in June. It was a 7-day, you know, kind of like a summer camp for business people. And of those 600 people that were there, and the 7 days, 5 to 6 of the days were spent on health and wellness. Isn't that interesting? I was shocked about that. I thought it was going to be goal setting and money making. He is a billionaire after all. And he ended up saying that our greatest wealth, I'm sure you'd agree with this, is our health. And we have to continue to harness our energy, or else, you know what, the stress just keeps coming, it breaks you down. And then if you're like me, you start to have habits like I was having of negativity. I was choosing foods and maybe drinking more red wine than I normally would because of stress, right? And then the habits become problems. And so that was me. And what happened was, I just was breaking down. So I had someone read this thing called heart rate variability. I was at a seminar on a weekend, and it was one of those things where I had to get continuing education. And of course, as my luck at this time, after a long string of events, what happened was I went to a doctor's seminar and needed 2 ethics credits. That's all I needed. I had more than enough for my biennial. And the long and the short is, it was at 8 in the morning in Orlando. I had to get up and drive, and I was tired, and I had already worked almost 60 hours that week. And so there I was going to this thing, and I remember sitting in the class and I couldn't even learn. I was just like, I'm gonna take notes because my eyes are open but no one's home. And long and the short is, I went out, they were all talking about brain entrainment and how to deal with chronic stress. And all these doctors that are like the top class doctors are now they're more into how do we overcome and in our brain, you know, not go into coherent states that are just negative. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I came out and I had him do this heart rate variability. I now have that in my office. It's a very expensive machine, and it reads your brain and nervous system. And it was no surprise when he showed me psychologically, psycho-emotionally, that my brain was red-black, which is like, black's the worst, you know? And I was like, yeah, I know. And he's like, well, are you okay? And I'm like, no. Do you think, you know? But I was like, yes, I'm fine. You know, like, thanks for pointing out what I already knew. Most patients aren't like that. For me, they're just kind of like, why do you have to show me what I already know? But I was right honest. I'm like, I know my brain is red-black. What I want to know is how to fix it. How do I fix it? Okay, I know I've become a more negative person. I know it's hard to keep up the rate that I did when I was in my 30s. I'm in my 40s now. Do you know what I mean? And so it ended up being that thing, that weird visor that you saw in that picture, that's brain tap. It does acupuncture without needles, which if anybody's afraid of needles, it's pretty cool. And it brain entrains. And I felt a literal difference after, but I've measured it scientifically. That's just one of the things I'd love to share with you. So come see me at my office. But today's talk is about the 5 elements to health and vitality. What I did over the last 14 years is I had to realize, because passion does wear out. Rob and I were talking about my level of passion. That can only go so far before you need just energy. Energy is what we're all looking for. Energy is how we're going to succeed. So I want to talk to you guys today about the 5 elements to harness the energy in your body, because I truly do believe, as you'll see in a second here, that a great life requires great energy. Would you agree with that? So I don't know if you're like me, but back to the Tony Robbins Life and Wealth Mastery, they had this biocharger upstairs. And I decided it was free. And of all the hundreds and hundreds of people, probably 700 people, hardly anybody went upstairs and actually did the free biocharger. But I did it, and I want you guys to be like that. I want you guys to make that action step to say, not just hear a great talk, hopefully you think it's a great talk, hopefully it does impact you. Toss out whatever you don't like, by the way. But what's it gonna take for you to harness more energy so that you take an action step today to becoming healthier and better for your life and enjoying your life more? Because that really should be what it's all about. So when we talk about wood, we're going to do 5 elements today, and the 5 elements are from the acupuncture and Chinese medicine. It's really just like a 2,000 to 3,000 year old science, that there's these elements. You guys have heard of like Earth, Wind, and Fire, the band. Well, there's also wood and metal, okay, and a few other things. So I call wood is the ability to become pain-free and well-adjusted. And then we're going to follow that with metal. And metal is about maintaining spinal strength and rehabilitation. And then we're going to talk about water. And water is about energy medicine and acupuncture, but we're going to teach you how to flip negative experiences into positive living. And then there's going to be, last but not least, is earth, and that's optimizing your blood work using functional medicine. And that's about, really nourishing your density of your body so that you can have optimal functioning. So here we go. So wood to me is about becoming pain-free and well-adjusted. So many of us are struggling with chronic inflammation. Would you agree? There's a lot of conditions around inflammation. And they're saying even heart disease and all that is from a state of chronic inflammation. So whether you've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia or just you ache, you hurt, and it's chronic, how do we deal with that? So one of the things I'd say that's really important about becoming pain-free, dealing with chronic inflammation and becoming pain-free, is to know how to do that. And that a lot comes from our chronic stress level. Would you agree that chronic stress is what's breaking us down? It also is why we make the poor choices we make. In 2016, 22 million people died from opioid-related deaths. That's one of the causes Melissa and I are on, Missy, Jordan and I are on, and Melissa too, who's here, and JC, is we're trying to educate doctors' offices that there are pain alternatives. There are ways to deal with pain. that do not include opioids, which are things like hydrocodone. If you were thinking about, I don't know, does anyone know how many people are in New York City? Can we guess a millions, number of millions? 20 million? So more than New York City in our United States of America died in 2016 from opioid-related deaths. Can we put that in perspective, you guys? Isn't that crazy? And so there's people around us all the time that we love that get addicted and because they're in pain. So we have to make better choices. We gotta do better. Anyway, chronic stress is what does it. Then we break down, we don't have strength. And so it's just so important that we keep our standards high and that we are able to deal with the chronic pain and inflammation. If you've ever been in pain really bad, it's a desperate feeling. You feel very vulnerable. And that's one of the reasons so many of my patients bond and they call themselves friends, is because I'm there for them in that pain. But I want to be there when you're also on the wellness path too. So as we move along, wood is about becoming pain-free. I'd say the most important thing you can do is what I did. Find out how your brain and nervous system really are, how healthy. Even me, a health nut, because of the chronic stress and some of my choices around that, I wasn't doing so good. During that time of stress, I can tell you now I'm coming out of it, and boy, it feels good. And I see it scientifically on that heart rate variability. But one of the things that's so powerful is that I can pull myself out of it. There are ways to do it through brain entrainment, getting adjusted. During that time when I was just under stress, I kept getting pinches in my neck, mid-back pain. I mean that it was excruciating. I had to cancel a whole day's work because of a pinched nerve in my neck. So when I called my dad, who's a chiropractor, he's like, "What'd you do?" And I said, "Nothing. I didn't do anything." Ever been there? And you're like, "I didn't do anything." It was stress. Isn't that crazy? That's how it impacted my body, and I know I'm not alone. Next, we talk about fire. Fire is really, we're calling it about mastering the game of food, but really to me, it is about fat burning, and you're getting to your ideal weight, but fat burning for energy, keeping fire burning in your body. And one of that is mastering the game of food and inflammation. When we want to master the game of food, how do we do it? You got to learn about your gut. Isn't that funny? I used to do talks on the gut and people would look down and go, "What about it?" We're not talking about the external gut, we're talking about the internal gut. And you're going to hear more and more about that scientifically. They call it the microbiome. Have any of you guys heard that term? Microbiome. And the microbiome is really the health of your gut. And usually if we're having regular bowel movements, so to speak, and we think everything's normal, we're like, "I'm fine, my gut's fine," and you're probably wrong. Almost a lot of the inflammation comes from either the spine and nervous system or the gut itself. Isn't it crazy that we really aren't that well if our gut isn't well? So working on that, and that's the game of, to me, the food game is alkalinizing foods, and you have to learn about what those are because they cool the inflammation. And if you can get into fat burning, which I'm a big proponent of the keto diet, if you can get into fat burning, what happens in alkalinizing foods, you can actually heal and become a power source and be very fit and thin. One of the other things you got to take care of is your adrenal glands. The adrenal glands sit over the kidneys. There are fight or flight glands. We're overusing them. And they're shriveling up like little raisins, and they can produce every hormone, including when women are in menopause. They can actually produce some of the progesterone and estrogen. They can produce testosterone for men when they stop producing testosterone, but they can if they aren't taken care of. So you can measure those things by saliva and blood work. It's very powerful stuff. So, and also I would say about fire, keeping your fire burning is detoxing your liver, making sure you're not only eating healthier, more organic foods, less toxins, but cleaning out the toxins you've probably accumulated over the last 30, 40, 50 years. Have you ever seen someone when you go to get your oil changed, have they ever taken the filter out of your car and showed you the filter? And ever seen that and they're like, "Look at this," and you're like, "Get me a new one. How much does it cost? I don't care." Well, have you ever thought that we can't look at our liver, but how would your liver actually look? This filtration system, this big organ, that sits right under your right rib cage or in your right rib cage here. One of the biggest organs. How does your filter look? Have you ever cleaned it? I doubt it, and it's just gross to me because how can you burn fat? Fat goes through the liver to be broken down. That's where it is. And if your liver's all plugged up and fatty, it's almost impossible. So you want to detox the liver, and you want to do that on a regular basis and then not put more toxins in. Next is the topic of metal. I kind of think of this, we call it maintaining spinal strength and rehab. Do you see what it says underneath there? Do whatever you want without getting hurt. Isn't that the goal? Every guy out there is like, yes, I love this girl. Because I want to do whatever I want to do, whenever I want to do it physically, and I don't want to get hurt. Anybody else out there joining me? But we all have weak links. Where is your weak link? We all have them. Usually there's a story, like an injury story. Do you know what I mean? And they give out. We have places, everyone has probably, unless you're a perfect human being, a place in their spine, whether it's your neck, your mid-back. If a lot of women get it in between, their shoulder blades, they're always stressed there. Guess what? That's the number one place in the nervous system where stress registers. T1 through T12. If those bones get stuck down or locked in, you keep getting the stimulus of stress, even if you're like on vacation. I just feel stressed out. I don't understand. I can't relax. Because the button almost that's going to stimulate that part of your nervous system that's fight or flight, sympathetic, is just running. There's a parasympathetic too, but a lot of times we don't have the rest and relaxation mechanism, do we? So adjustments and some of the technology in my office is designed to balance your nervous system, but also to strengthen your weak links, because if not, they break back down again. So that's key. What else would I say about metal is, it can be done to build yourself back up. And it doesn't take long. A lot of times people will say, okay, well, Ramah, you got to come forever to a chiropractor. I'm like, or 6 weeks, 2 times a week, 15 minutes. It's not anything that could kill you. I remember with all this winter of my healthcare field, as trying to get insurance to even pay, etc., what I realized was they're not going to, and it's only getting worse. I remember with Blue Cross Blue Shield's one particular sector, I didn't get paid for 1 x-ray in a 1.5 years. And I invested in a digital x-ray machine. So would you be okay with that if you were a doctor running a big office? Yeah, so I had to realize, like, wow, I gotta make changes. Somebody moved my cheese, and they moved it a long time ago. I just wasn't paying attention. And so the long and the short is, one of the things I did was I made my adjustments $39.95. That's lower than every copay I can pretty much think of. Why? Because then that way you can vote with your feet. You don't have to beg your insurance to cover you, and you can do whatever you need to do to become well, vital, full of power and energy, and do whatever you want, whenever you want. Part of the fun of business is on our off time and being able to do sporty things and enjoy our life. My yoga teacher's here, and if I can't enjoy yoga because my back hurts too much, yoga's amazing. So you can do it. It takes 6 weeks, 2 months. It's possible, and it's easier than you think. And so then we put you through a rehab program too, where we strengthen your spine both passively at first, like we do it all for you, and then actively in the second half of the program. So we build you up. How strong is your core? Most of us lift something up and our core is weakened, and that's why we hurt our low back. So that's that. Next is water. Water is about flipping negative thinking into positive living. For me, I don't know for you, if you feel like there's a lot of events that are more negative than positive, takes a lot of charisma, takes a lot of strength and leadership to become a person who creates win-wins. I used to think that everybody could do it, and I realized it takes high-functioning human beings to figure out how, if I have a new staff person, that I can help them win and I can win, and I'm not taking away from them in a win-lose. Would you agree? But there's all these things presented to us all the time, and if you're really functioning well, you can take the negative experiences that have probably happened to you, and you can see the good out of it. You can take and link traits that are going to help you to the negativity. And that's really critical in life to make it through, because there's always going to be challenges in business. I know more than anyone because I started my own business and I'm running my own business. And you know what, on a day-to-day basis, I deal with the stresses around business. So how do we do that? Well, there's something really crazy that I don't know if you guys are aware, that certain emotions, when unprocessed, certain events that are unprocessed actually store in our body. Did you guys know that? And like in the liver stores anger. How many women do you know that have had their gallbladder removed? Why? Because, I mean, pardon my French, but they're probably pissed off and they never got to express it in our society. We're just supposed to stuff it as women. Now, I hear way less guys getting their gallbladder out. It's occasional, but almost every woman I know over a certain age, there's a huge percentage of, oh, my gallbladder's gone. That's a storage duct for the liver, right? Which tells us also, too, our livers aren't very healthy if it's squirting out stuff that makes our gallbladders like, ugh. But the long and the short is, are we storing anger that's repressed or suppressed, right? I have people looking at me like, where's she going with this? You can make your organs sick by things not dealt with. I think we kind of know that, but it's interesting. Lungs are sadness and yearning and grief. And my mom just came, basically they sat down right after I got the brain tap, right after I found out my red-black brain, started fixing it. I had one night with the brain tap, and I felt so great. I was showing all my patients, and my parents came in at the end of the day. They said, we need to talk to you. How many patients do you have? And I said, 2. I said, what did I do? They said, nothing. I said, who's dead? Because they were like, we need to talk to you. So anyway, they said, we'll talk to you after you're done with your patients. And so I sat down and my mom told me she has lung cancer. And it's like, I'm already at that age where my mom has to have lung cancer, you know what I'm saying? So there goes my brain health, right back to black this time. But the long and the short is, I gave her my brain tap. I passed it across to her after I read them right at that moment. And man, my mom's brain coherence was like a slug that my daughter just drew on the ground. There was like, I'm usually, okay, there's a bad part at 10 a.m. when my new patients come accidentally. I feel like I need coffee at that point, or sugar, or protein, or nuts, or something, because I just feel like tired. It's brain coherence. Hers was barely alive. And so what I just passed it along to her. I said, I waited 6 weeks for this. You need it more than me. Take it. I know you're going north back to Iowa. And it was like one of those things. She said, Ramah, I can't tell you how important that was. When I'd wake up, she was getting a rotator cuff surgery and they found the cancer. So guess what? She didn't get a rotator cuff surgery. And then she's got cancer. So still in a lot of pain waking up at night. She put the brain tap on to take her out of the negativity and the pain, and it just changed her. She's so excited now. She had the surgery, everything's taken out, and she's gonna fight it the good old-fashioned natural way, because there's no more cancer in her body, so she's gonna opt to not do chemo. But how do we flip negative events into positive living? You have to have some mechanisms, and I can help you. I really am an expert at this. This is like one of my, I feel like, gifts from God, and I'd love to share it with you. There's ways that you can test the body for emotions. It's called applied kinesiology. Acupuncture can move energy away if it's stuck. Then there's like the brain tap over there. You see that, where we can re-entrain your brain. And so back to me, that story that I started with, where I had so many stresses and I became negative, brain tap was turning me around. I'm laughing at stuff. And even with my mom's situation before it turned around, I just have faith instead of faking faith or pretending or telling myself. It's amazing to know that I actually had breakthroughs where I could look at it and then I could go, but now I'm right here, can't do anything about it, I'm gonna be happy and enjoy the moment. Isn't that cool? And I know we all go through it, or you're not alone. Last but not least is earth. So important to optimize yourself, to be like nutrient dense. Our stress is pulling out all our chemistry. So like your brain, if it was a gas tank and it was filled with chemicals like gas, well, what if it was filled with things called neurotransmitters, which it is. There's things like phenylethylalanine, I think I said it right, PEA, or serotonin, which you've heard of, dopamine, which you've heard of, right? but maybe you haven't heard of norepinephrine and epinephrine or some of the other chemistries in the brain. They all have to be in a certain harmony and balance. Either that or you get mind racing, anxiety attacks, panic attacks, or just plain old depression. All those have to be in harmony. Well, when we're undergoing stress, it burns out the gas tank. And over time, the gas tank gets lower and lower, and you go into your problematic behaviors. OCD, ADD, maybe just like I said, panic attacks, maybe depression. Did you know you can actually take herbal supplements, if you know the right ones, and replace it instead of medication? Like, I get it, if someone has bipolar, they may not want to be on herbals. That might not be enough for them. But if you don't have a mood disorder diagnosed at this point, you need to replace your chemicals back into your brain, or it's impossible to feel happy. You can try really hard like I did. I studied under the best. Tony Robbins is one of them. But you can't talk yourself into it. You need to add back the chemistry in order to make yourself feel good. And that's what Earth is all about. Earth is about, really optimizing the health of your body. So we look at blood work a lot of times. And when you look at blood work, you can look at that you're in range, but there's an optimal range that's a very narrow range in blood work. So a lot of times we're passing, but we're not like optimized like this well-oiled machine that statement says. So how can you do that? How can you nurture your earth? And if you guys didn't notice already, I'm sorry, I should have said so. This little brochure here has some notes in it, so you can have that in case you didn't take time to take notes. And anything that, really caught your attention, if you come in and talk to me, we'll talk more about it. But nurturing yourself is all about, again, getting the toxins out and the right stuff in and not having depletions and excesses. So you can do it. It's not that hard. Some people go, well, doc, I don't know if I can afford it. My adjustments are $39.95. Okay, nutrition, you can go and guess, like many people do, where you go to the health food store and you try to buy it, or GNC, and you're asking a teenager for their advice at the store. Or you can come and we can get exactly according to your blood work what you need, and at the right dosage, etc., and replace the stuff that's missing. So optimizing yourself. So I want to thank you guys today. I hope you are like me. I hope you're action oriented. I hope you have some click that happens where you don't just hear this talk and go, wow, that's great for her, but it's not realistic for me. That you take action towards your betterment of your health. Our great and amazing lives require amazing energy. And we're talking ongoing energy at whatever age you are. So I challenge you today to throw out whatever didn't work for you that's just not of interest. But if there was something inside of your gut that you responded to, act on it. That's how it works. God gives us these opportunities that are like right in front of us always, if we can just pay attention and take the opportunity.